I appreciate all of you coming this morning to the panel. It is an Asian American Pacific Islanders Civil Rights History. What does it mean for 21st century youth? I'm Linda Vo, and I'm chair of the Department of Asian American Studies at the University of California, Irvine, and I'm very, very pleased to be here. I was invited here by Tammy Peng, who's sitting over in the front here, who's doing the note-taking for this session. And Tammy basically runs the Orange County office for the Asian Pacific American Legal Center by herself, and so I really appreciate having her in Orange County and representing the community there. She organized this panel and invited all of us to discuss the challenges that youth face today. And I'm very pleased to have a very distinguished panel who have experience working in the community themselves as youth, and also as part of their employment and as part of their volunteer work as well. They have vast experience in working with Asian American Pacific Islander youth. I'm not going to read their extensive bios because they are long and they are in your program. I want to save the time that I have to discuss and have a dialogue after they do brief presentations. And here. So let me just say in general what we envision this panel to be, and then I'll introduce just who they are and their positions, and then give them a few minutes to present, and then we'll open it up for dialogue afterwards. The Asian American and Pacific Islander communities have changed drastically in the last 30 years. And if you just look at the demographics, all of us know that in terms of the ethnic groups, and the number of ethnic groups is very different than it was 30-some years ago during the civil rights movement. And that has improved our communities in many ways, but it has increased the challenges that we face. There are major differences in terms of the number of women and families and generations that are here. There are regional differences across the country in terms of the ethnic communities and the composition of the communities and the development of the communities. And one of the major differences from 30 years ago is the vast number of Asian American youth. They are the largest ever Asian American Pacific Islander youth that we've ever had. And it's a different generation than the generation that I grew up in or the generation before me, where we had very few Asian American youth. And that has increased the kinds of resources they have in terms of human resources, their talents that they bring, and also it increases the challenges that they face. In terms of thinking of this group, they're not unified in many ways. They are very different in terms of their linguistic abilities. They're different in terms of their class background, where they grew up, if they grew up in urban America, rural America, suburban America, that it shapes their experiences. So for us today, how do we think about Asian American youth and activism and mobilization and grassroots activism? How do we consider what is important for them when they are so vastly different? In addition to that, 30 years ago, the political context was very different for civil rights movement. It was very easy to talk about racial discrimination and inequality because it was confrontational, in-your-face type of discrimination. Not that that kind of discrimination hasn't disappeared, but now much of the discrimination that we face as a community can be subtle, can be indirect, and can be covert as well. And there are different strategies that we need to combat those forms of discrimination. The political context has changed in terms of who is in the White House, who is in the administration. Does it make a difference that we have an African-American white president in the White House? And many of the youth in our country, including Asian American Pacific Islander youth, help to mobilize and to help him win office. Does it make a difference? Can we even speak about a post-racial America? And I think that's the kind of discourse that's being tossed around. But the reality that Asian American youth, whether they're immigrant, whether they're migrants, refugees, face is very different than the reality that we often see of this the vision that many have of this post-racial America. So what I've asked the panelists to do is address some of their experiences working with youth, looking at the particular experiences they have in their ethnic communities that they're most experienced in, because I think that is one of the most crucial issues. We have to understand that the trajectories of our communities have developed very differently, and that shapes the ability of the youth in those communities to mobilize and the resources that they might have. And I also wanted them to engage in the issues of what is the most effective strategies that they've worked with in mobilizing youth. And I work with youth in a college context oftentimes, and sometimes in the community. And I actually work on a campus that is the majority Asian American Pacific Islander youth. It's over 50, close to 55% out of 27,000 students are Asian American Pacific Islander on my campus. But that doesn't mean they're all in my classes. That doesn't mean that they come to the functions or the events we put together. And in some ways, they take what they have for granted because they see so many youth that they don't feel that they need to organize in any ways. And I think that's a new challenge that we face that we didn't face a generation ago. So I wanted them to address the challenges that they do face in the communities that they work in, with the ethnic groups they worked in, and how has history shaped the development of youth mobilization, and what do they see the challenges in the future for grassroots organizing. So let me introduce the panelists very briefly, and we'll have them speak for about 15 minutes or so. Okay, so the first panelist is Sefa Anna, and he's Director of Asian American Resource Center at Pomona College, and you can cheer for him. He brought his posse with him, I see. He's very popular, as you know, and he's worked not only at Pomona College, but at UCLA, and he is an alumni of UCLA as well. So.
Give blessings to the ancestors and to the people of the Tongva tribe who are native to this land. My name is Sefa Aina. My mother's Arieta Pulu from the Mawika clan, the village of Awa in American Samoa, Tutuila. My father's Saver Aina from the Aina clan, from the village of Fitiuta in the island of Manua. And prior to working at Pomona College, I also worked at the UCLA Asian American Studies Center, the Asian American Studies Center. I'm at the Asian American Resource Center, so it's one word switch, but I worked at the Asian American Studies Center, and a lot of people know the center as sort of the crossroads of anyone who eventually is going to do something in Asian American studies. So it was a blessing to be there. I often tell students, my time there was real interesting, because when I first entered the space, 2 doors down, Yuri Kochiyama was writing her memoirs. 4 doors down, Yuji Ichioka, person who coined the term Asian American, was working down there. Upstairs, Glenn Omatsu, Don Nakanishi, Russell Young, and many, many other wonderful people, Bob Nakamura, and many of the groundbreakers for the communities. So I worked at UCLA for 8 years, and then I worked at Pomona. Now I currently work at Pomona College, the Asian American Resource Center, for the past 5 years, 4.5 years. The reason why I bring this up, and even going back to my lineage, is because what I'm going to share with you today are really my opinions. But my opinions are shaped by those places. My opinions are shaped by those experiences. They're shaped by where my mother and father are from. And so I also want to acknowledge that there are many experts in this room that I just even see just by taking a look that do the same kind of work that I do. People like Sumi and Jade over at AAPI, Raj over at Redlands, Natasha doing work at UCLA, and Regina, good friend I haven't seen in quite a bit, who's at Santa Monica Community College. So there are a lot of us, a lot of allies that do this kind of work that I'm going to talk about. The questions that we kind of came up with and that I want to spend some time talking about are: what historical factors shape youth activism, and how do contemporary political, economical, this mess that we live in today kind of shape that? And when I first started to write down my thoughts, I went to the my natural tendency to focus on Pacific Islanders and what that means. Without about a couple of days and really being reinforced by being here yesterday and seeing a lot of old students, I actually have a lot of Asian kids that I feel like I've had an impact on their lives too. So I feel like I should move away from just talking about the Pacific Islander experience. There was a wonderful workshop yesterday, and Natasha did a great job prior to this to talking about it, and I can talk about it. I have this really funny story about Survivor Samoa that I wanted to share with folks. Gotta love Survivor. You know, in very positive ways, the civil rights movement has produced organizations and institutions that are more accessible and sensitive to the needs of APIs. Activists, whether they be scholars, organizers, artists, et cetera, have helped to give voice to the issues that impact our communities. This, of course, is a continuous process, but the foundations that they've laid through the civil rights movement are still alive today, I believe, in some places. So the mantra of serve the people, for example, is still active at places like UCLA, places like Pomona College. You have a lot of students who want to be active and who learned that history and want to know how to make an impact in our communities today. The development of curriculum, not only in Asian American studies, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have expanded that, and they're active in queer and gender studies. They're active in various areas that help to move the dialogue. And I think that is a direct reflection to the charge for a relevant education that was very much at the core of the civil rights movement. So these kinds of things are continuing to happen on campus. They've definitely evolved, as they should, and they've expanded. A couple of things that are sort of, I don't want to say they're problems, they're issues definitely for sure. The more and more we become sophisticated on our individual campuses, the more isolated we become from each other. So people are doing amazing work on their particular campus, but because we're so caught up in what we do and the 10, 20, 30 million things that our particular campus does, the harder it makes for us to work with AAPI or even Raj out there in Redlands, because for anybody who knows the Inland Empire, there is nothing out there. There is nothing out there. You know, and so we have to get people on the Metrolink to come down here and work in Asian American heaven down here in downtown Los Angeles. But we're so close to each other, yet we don't reach across. And I could say at Pomona College, we don't even reach across the 5 colleges very well, right? They're in walking distance. I can walk from the one Asian American Resource Center at Pomona College to the Center for APA Students at Pitzer College and walk through 3 or 4 different colleges on my way there and see Asian American organizations and groups and student formations, and still we don't do a good enough job at working across these colleges. Now, again, on the positive side of that, we have had some victories which allow us to do work, to have a space. You know, one of the questions that was being asked to me last year, and I laughed about it, and I tried not to laugh when the student posed it to me, was, is the Asian American Resource Center an institution? Well, you know, the lights came on, you know, the air conditioning comes through the vents, and you got a paycheck, you know what I mean? And so in some ways, yeah, we have become institutionalized, but I like to think what we do within the institution moves the institution, right? It stretches its boundaries and things like that. So isolation has become a problem in this new age because, and it's good and bad. It's good in the sense that they're doing some amazing work at UCLA, which I celebrate and I'm really proud of. But you know, we could also do better at collaborating with USC and Cal State Long Beach and places like that. That's also one of the reasons why you don't see a strong regional pan-API student voice. Prior to all this access and things like that, you had an organization called AAPI, the Asian Pacific Student Union, who became a lobbying voice for Asian Pacific students and needs at the state level. Similar to, how many of folks are familiar with ICASU? The East Coast Asian American Student Union, or MASU, the Midwest Asian American Student Union. Well, you know, that's great. Those organizations are great, but I think that's almost necessary in the Midwest. I visited places like Colorado, Denver, Colorado. There's nothing out there. You know what I mean? You try to mute your Asianness out there because people trip. You know what I mean? And in the South, you know, it ain't always, you know, it ain't always accepting. You know what I mean? That's why, you know, I like Southern California because, you know, you can't get away with that kind of stuff around these parts. So, you know, things like ICASU and MASU are there and they're ready to mobilize. Do we have that here on the West Coast? Are we able to do that? I think we're friendly for sure. We know each other for sure, but are we ready to go if something happens like a budget crisis, which we currently are in? Do we have a way to, or a mechanism to respond to that. And even if we do have, and we do have some examples of collaboration, but they tend to be system specific. So for example, the UC system, the UC students were really successful in getting the Count Me In stuff going, which disaggregated the API category. But it's had a much more difficult time working across systems with the community colleges, with the CSUs, and with private schools, because the same budget issues that affect you in the public schools are also affecting people in the private schools as well. So we just don't do a good enough job working across systems. So the other thing that I think is maybe possibly a problem with what's going on today is just there doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency. When in the 60s, when people are telling you, no, you can't come to school here, no, you are going to be tracked into there, no, people are not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, the sense of urgency is actually kind of present. It's in your face. But that has become muted, it's become codified, and it's become institutionalized, and it's become almost invisible. So the sense of urgency almost needs to be built up, and I don't really see that sense of urgency. With all the advancements that have been made in the struggle, how do we get generations to understand or even appreciate the work? And some of the things, I'm going to pose questions because we have a lot of experts out there. Getting generations to understand and appreciate the work. Personally, for me, is that even the point? Should they even have to appreciate the work? The 60s mantra of education is a right and not a privilege. Yeah, that's true, but the end of that sentence should say, a shitty education is your right, while a good one still remains a privilege. Without the understanding, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to cuss. Am I supposed to cuss? I'm actually doing pretty good, because I cuss a lot, actually. Without the understanding of this sense of urgency, we run the risk of creating entitlement, and the line between entitlement and empowerment are really oftentimes get blurred. Studies on identity development that tell us that as people develop, they grow to understand these truths for themselves. The question is, given the times and the conservative backlash that has really been growing over the last few decades, how can we help to create this sense of urgency? How can we, while balancing the need, the very real need for our young folks to actually have a space to process and to grow and to learn? Where is that balance going to be? And then we could talk about that a little bit later. With the election of Obama, it's like, okay, we're post-racial now. Everybody's heard the trash, you know what I mean, as if that was the day. It was a good-ass day, though, for reals, right? But the simplicity, if that analysis is hard to combat in this age of the sound bite, when a lot of ADD out there, you know what I mean? People just move on to the next thing, you know what I mean? News comes up and it goes down just as fast as it comes up, and people are almost overstimulated with stuff. So how do we deal with that? The other questions that we had were, the generational questions. How do we mobilize, given the large number of first 1.5 generations and other AAPI youth? First of all, we need to also challenge, the way we term our generations, because I have to ask people, am I 1.5? I don't know what that means. Not everybody identifies that way, and that's one way that we can begin to sort of dismantle this whole, hierarchy that exists within our communities. But that's another soapbox I'll stand on later. I think we need to look at the surrounding factors that, of the presence of these generations. With globalization, definitely people are definitely here out of necessity. But involuntary immigrants groups, some are definitely have different obstacles to overcome, and we could talk about that a little bit later. But what happened to the 60s mantra of when you call yourself an Asian American or a Pacific Islander, when you affirm your identity, and if you guys have seen Tad Nakamura's film on Song for Ourselves, Chris Ejima talks about that. When you said that, that meant you had a certain political ideology. Does that still mean that? Does that still assume that you have a political ideology, a progressive political ideology? I don't know. I mean, people will just say it. People will just claim it, you know, and be okay with that. So, you know, yet how do we combat that when some of the strongest Asian American voices out there are people like Bobby Jindal or Michelle Malkin? You got to claim your people, Sumi. You got to claim them. So glad my people are not on the national screen like that. Let's see. What strategies? Okay, I want to spend my last minute or so on strategies. Okay, I got 1 minute on strategies. For me, the thing that has worked the best, and I have some of my former students in here who took those classes. This is a course I used to teach called AAPI. It's the Asian Pacific American Leadership Development Project. And the reason why that course was successful is because there was a space for us to engage each other, for us to get a philosophical framework or a grounding into what we were going to do out there. And then ultimately, and I hate to say this because a lot of people are here, and I don't think any of my current students are here, so please don't let that get out, but it was a big stick. You know, if you didn't fear me, you feared your grade. You know what I mean? And so if I told you to go out there and help kids, you got in the car and you went. You know what I mean? You went where I told you to go. And that's the seedy side of it, but the good part of it is I want you have to be able to hear different voices. So we send people here to the Legal Center to listen to Stuart Quo. We send people to the Little Tokyo Service Center to listen to Bill Watanabe. We send you out there because I don't know everything. These professors don't know everything. You got to figure out who, not you, Linda, you do know everything. But you got to hear different voices, and you got to be open to different teachers, and you got to respect the knowledge that doesn't always come in the classroom. So that's my time.
Thank you, Safa. We'll have more time for Safa to get more of his ideas out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the lead on this. All right, our next presenter is Sophia Chum, and she's a program director at Khmer Girls in.
Program
Want to do that again?
coordinator.
Okay. You're now a coordinator?
No, coordinator, you said director.
Oh, okay. She's now a youth
No.
coordinator?
Never mind.
Okay. All right. Sophia Chum, who's a program director of Khmer Girls in Action. It's one of my favorite organizations, and it's based in Long Beach. Not only do they do local work, but they've done work that has been nationally and internationally recognized for their work on the rights of the Cambodian American and also Cambodian American youth as well. So she's also one of the founding members of Khmer Girls in Action.
Cool. Hello. Hi. I just wanted to correct. I think you said program director, but I'm program coordinator. I don't want to take my director's name position. But I'm Sophia, and I'm here today. I'm gonna share with folks our leadership model. That it's still a working document for us, but it's been working for us, and it's also how I was able to transition into a staff position. And then I'll talk a little bit about our past work in defeating Prop 4. And our current work on our participatory action research projects that we're currently doing with our girls. So I apologize if I'm just a little scattered everywhere. It's my first panel, and I might have a lot to say, so feel free to come up to me and talk to me afterwards if folks have any other questions. All right, so Khmer Girls in Action is a community-based organization. We're located in Long Beach. We work with young youth Khmer girls, specifically age 14 to 21. But as of right now, our focus is on young high school Khmer youth right now. But we do have, as I go through our leadership model, you'll see why we still work with the girls after they've graduated high school. And just a little brief history, Long Beach has the largest Long Beach is the largest Cambodian community. We are populated, I think our population is about 60,000 Cambodians living there. We are the largest, Long Beach has the largest population of Cambodians outside of Cambodia. So second to that would be Lowell, Massachusetts, I believe, on the East Coast. So on top of that, it's very crucial that KJ exists and why we currently are doing our work. And then a brief history to the girls that we work with. Their parents are survivors of the Khmer Rouge War. Sorry, I get a little emotional because, all right, okay. So definitely there's definitely a lot of struggle and hardships that their parents have faced as survivors of the war to be here, as well as the transfer trauma to their daughters, the girls that we work with. Sorry. So on top of that, I want to share our leadership model that we've created. I myself has gone through this the many transitions to be where I am, and it's important to KGA that in our mission, in our vision, that we as an organization build young leaders to really lead the work, shape and change the community. Sorry. And it's in our vision and our core value that we hope the young girls would definitely one day be able to transition into staff role and really take over and become staff and really empower other young women to do the same. So on top of that, we have different programs that that are currently running right now with approximately 22 to 25 girls in the programs. And they start off, we usually recruit them when they're at age 14 because we know that's very important that they stay on and really build their critical thinking and really see the development and their growth within the 4 years and if they choose to continue with us. So we start off with they start off as general members as part of the Young Women's Empowerment Program. And that's when they learn a lot about themselves, their bodies, their gender, their culture, and they learn a lot about KGA, who we are, our mission, our vision, our core values, our work that we do, as well as connecting it to understanding the concept of social justice and social change values. So, sorry. So then on top of that, we hope that they would be able to transition into core leaders where they take on more roles. They do leading work on projects. They would lead committee work. They would get skill building trainings such as public speaking, communication trainings, how to facilitate, and they really represent the organization. They go out to trainings, to conferences, convenings, and really meet with other youth who are also doing similar work. Thanks. And as core leaders, they will be part of the youth leadership program, where they support the next tier of leaders, which is our Khmer Justice program, and they're our youth coordinators. And they definitely really work with staff. They work with other members, their mentors to the younger girls, and they have the opportunity to co-facilitate with staff. And then from that point, they transition into youth interns, and they become, I think they become like part-time interns. So they would come after school, and then kind of work with staff on developing curriculum for the training. They would go out to different sites and kind of meet with folks and kind of build relationships and alliance building with other folks. So I think I'm not being very specific on exactly what the members do in the trainings, but we do provide them political education so that they can build their critical thinking and political analysis to really make a personal connect to the social issues that they face. So we know that there's a lot of things that do come up with them, but we want to make sure that they're able to express themselves and the issues that they face with each other and have that space and that support, and then take that, and then from there they will be able to kind of like see it as a community issue and see it in a different lens. And then as youth coordinators with our Khmer Justice program, they would really be able to articulate our two areas of work, which is our immigrant and refugee rights work and our reproductive justice work. So there's definitely different As they go through their transitions, we definitely have them fill out applications, as well as assess where they're at, because we want to make sure we're nurturing them and supporting them through this whole process of growth and development. So on top of that, there's our CHA program, which stands for Cultural Historical Arts Program, which we connect, and the girls are able to also participate in that at all levels of membership that they're in. And this tool is very important to us because we find that as young people, there's definitely things that they go through personally, and we want to make sure that they have this outlet and this way to really self-express what are these issues you're facing, as well as how do you really make the connect and share it with the community that this is not just my issue, but this is a community issue, and then also be able to organize and create positive changes for themselves and their families. So in our Cultural Historical Arts program is where we have two components, which is our Media Justice Workshop, as well as our Writing Workshop. And those are two different ways that they can really express themselves. And they've done many digital video workshops on deportation, on communication with family, on gang violence, the issues that they face day to day. They put it in the context of, how the community is suffering and how we're really struggling. And then on top of that, KJ takes a really holistic approach to leadership development, and that's where our LIFE program comes in, which is learning to impact for empowerment. And we do personal and academic support for the girls. We know that as leaders, we want to build their political consciousness, but have them be able to have the opportunity to go for higher education, knowing that it's very difficult with the disconnect or a connect they might have with their parents at home, and also being that they come from a refugee background and then the different type of issues that might come with that. So our LIFE program consists of one-on-one check-ins that we do with them on a quarterly basis. We do skill workshops where we provide them time management workshops, money management workshop, kind of prepare for things that they know that they'll need as they get older, as well as college prep, where we do financial aid workshops. We work with the girls on personal statements. We do college tours with the girls to expose them to, and have them be familiar with these type of spaces, and maybe even walk a day in a college student's shoes. So it's definitely like different components, and our programming is really important in leadership development. And through that, they play different roles, and have different decision-making power in the organization. So, for example, I'll bring up our Proposition 4. We actually worked on Proposition 4 3 times. I believe it came out as 85, 73, and lastly, it was Proposition 4. So our girls were able to, in different levels, they were able to build their political understanding around Prop 4 and see that it is definitely a teen safety concern, as well as their choice to make decisions on their own bodies. And in the Khmer community, it's very difficult enough to talk about sex or to even talk about pregnancy. And culturally, in the Khmer community, when those things do come up as issues or problems in their homes, that the young women would be forced to get married, or they would have to run away and have back alley abortions. And that was our big concern, and then we also wanted the girls to have that voice to say that this is an issue and it's taboo in our community, but someone has to really step up and talk about this. And definitely because they are all under the age of 18 and they're not able to vote, they really look towards the older sisters or cousins or parents that might understand and really be able to vote on their behalf. So they really did a lot of work around that, and did phone banking, which they really liked. I was surprised, but they really liked phone banking, as well as door-to-door knocking, and they were able to talk to parents and other youth who were able to vote and kind of share how they felt about Prop 4 and the effects and the impact that'll have on them if it was to pass. So I think that was a really good experience for them that they had. It gave them a lot of hope and definitely a lot of strength to continue to do the work, and then to see how organizing work really happens. So I have 3 minutes, but I wanted to just share our leadership model with folks, and the different type of ways that we've really retained members and really did it in a really creative way. And I think the question I want to pose to folks is that in order for us to do the work, like if we want to really include young people in the work, how do we really make the personal connect to like their personal issues to the larger picture, and really use that and then do it in a really creative way, where they really learn about themselves and their community. So I think that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia, for sharing the everyday hard labor that you do at Khmer Girls in Action. The next panelist is Arnold Lee, and he's a law student and president of the Asian Pacific American Law Students Association at Southwestern Law School. And he has been doing a lot of work in voter mobilization and voter registration since basically you were in middle school. Is that correct? So he's a model for all of us and the future generations.
Hi, everybody. My name is Arnold Lee. As Linda pointed out, I actually work a lot in voter registrations. I actually started in politics when I was about 12 or 13 because of my brother. I'm actually 23 right now, so roughly 10 years ago. It actually happened one morning at 5:30. Got dragged out of bed by my brother. It's like, oh, we gotta go, we got work to do. What? It's 5:30 in the morning. So we went. I live in the city of Walnut, for people that knows the eastern side of San Gabriel Valley. It's right next to Pomona. So we went to the Pomona Fairplex. And for those that are first-generation Americans, that is a primary place for naturalization for new citizens. So we went, we registered voters, and it was pretty rewarding because I am also a first-generation American myself. A few years ago, I was also naturalized, so then I got to feel what those individuals have felt. And after then, I got more involved in politics, worked on local campaigns, for those that also worked on campaigns, you know that you have the usual getting chased by dogs or having the door shut in front of your face with just centimeters from your nose, and those were not the best experiences. But the thing is, youth, when I was doing this, I did not discover that there was a lot of youth involvement. And there's also some concern that even today, youth involvement has also been lacking. And I like to share some of the things that I think might be effective to mobilize youth in their activism. And can I actually put this up a little bit? It's sorry. I'm 6'3", so it's a little difficult. And I like to share, recently, Congresswoman Judy Chu was elected to Congress to fill the space of former Congresswoman Hilda Solis. And she's actually the first Chinese woman to be elected in Congress. This sort of demonstrates how it's a landmark for Asian American, for Chinese, especially for Chinese Americans. And it demonstrates even in the 21st century, we are still taking these steps, having our first woman Chinese congresswoman elected in Congress. It shows that, yes, we're making progress, but we still have work to do. And Judy, along with Mike Ng, the assembly member from the 49th District in Monterey Park area, John Chung, Mike Honda, these are all individuals that started their work when they were all youths at a local level. And to quote Tip O'Neill, all politics is local. And this is especially true for all these individuals. And if it wasn't for them and their work, there would be actually a lot of not so pleasant things. For example, the 1980s, the English only proposal in Monterey Park, which kind of forbids foreign language to be displayed in the city. And Judy Chu was one of the individuals in the forefront to prevent this from happening. So it was part of her effort to combat this. And then after that, she was elected to city council. But the point is that all these individuals, along with many others, I'm sure, are all started when they were youths. So it's necessary to go out and search and mobilize these youths today, because they are pretty much our leaders tomorrow, and they will shape our lives, shape our politics in the near future. So what I found effective for myself, I started when I was 13, and then in high school, I know this is a nonpartisan forum, but I was the high school Democratic president for my campus, and then I was a state officer for the Young Democrats, and now I'm with the Democratic Party co-chairing the voter registration committee. And also, I'm not trying to list my bio or anything, but I'm the president of the Asian Pacific American Law Student Association, the largest organization on campus. But what I find in law school, it's very, very difficult to mobilize students, because it's law school. Everybody's reading, everybody's studying, everybody's outlining for those that went through law school. And so this year, and last year actually, we found a lot of different methods to promote awareness, not just political or issue awareness, but also even like fun events. But the thing is, we all, for those that use the internet, we all live double lives. Our reality life, right here, and our internet life. And you know that we are pretty much very accessible in our internet lives. Most of the youths now have some sort of account of MySpace or Friendster, if that's still around, or Facebook. And one of the functions that I found was most effective was the creating an event function on the Facebook application. Not that it only distributes this on a massive scale, but if you leave it open, it will allow your friends that have been invited to invite their friends to certain events that you want to have people to attend. Not just for parties, obviously, but so this is one of the things that, because youths right now are, because of the, unless students are in college right now being impacted by the student fee hike, students are, I don't want to generalize, but has been, for a few exceptions, have been apathetic in the past 10 years. I can speak because for the past 10 years I've been a youth, I think. But yeah, they've been really apathetic, and it's really difficult to make them aware of certain things. And mobilization, I think, have multiple tiers. One is awareness, to make sure that they know that the event is happening. But two, before even the awareness component, it is necessary to identify what kind of issues or interests that these particular youths are interested in, because the worst thing you want is having a person attend an event being bored, for one, or two, doesn't even want to be there. So in order to to mobilize youth, it's necessary to provide access, definitely, but it's all necessary to make them aware of what your issue is about, and certain concerns that they might be concerned with, so they can opt into you. And when they opt in, you want to make sure that you capture them to make sure they don't leave. And one of the things that's necessary to make sure they don't leave is communication. I'm gonna use another analogy. Most of the clubs on our campus at Southwestern Law School has dissipated because of the lack of communication. And pretty much I can say generally now with communication that it is one of the most important things no matter what field you're in. So communication, access, and to identify their interests are the most important components, I think, to youth outreach. And then youth. There's two types of youth, I think, that can be distinguished. The first generation youth, Asian American immigrant youth, and a second generation. The difficulty in mobilizing first generation youth are that they are pretty much, I think, depending on what country they come from, they might still be attached to their former country. And you would see, for those that grew up here and have Asian parents, you would see that the Asian parents almost constantly watched the media from their native country to be updated from the politics, the weather, if there's some some like bad weather happening it's just difficult because they're still attached and they're not really living here at the moment. And another difficulty is the language. You can't really identify Asian Americans per se. Asian Americans are very diverse, and because of that, we are all fragmented. It is extremely difficult to branch out to grasp Asian Americans, to say that you want to capture Asian Americans, because it's basically very close to impossible because of our diversity and our background. So another example is during the Judy Chu campaign, we had a mini workshop to train the canvassers and the volunteers. We had one side training in Vietnamese, one side training in Mandarin, and one side training in Cantonese. And then on the other side of the wall, they were training in Spanish, just to show how diverse one congressional district can be. And it's very difficult to unify this and to make them aware of the important issues surrounding that area. So the first generation youth are very difficult to capture, but then second generation are the ones that grew up here. Well, I don't know if I'm 1.5 according to CIFA too. I came here when I was around 6, 7 years old, and I pretty much, like a lot of my friends. So I think it's 1.5 generation. Yeah, but so 1.5 generations and second generations are easier to access because they pretty much grew up here and they know the language, so there's no problem with the language barriers. So all you need to do, what I think, is to go out and capture these youth to see what they're interested in, to provide access, to maintain communication, so then they would stay in the group, and to update them occasionally and make sure that depending on what organization you're running, it's necessary to keep track, to just like give them a list of diverse issues, because one issue splinters off into multiple issues, and that person can only identify to one of the issues. So you want to make sure you cater to all of these issues embedded in this one issue. So I think the media is really important. With the internet is a primary focus that I think is pretty effective. And just to bring it back full circle, because I think my time is almost up too, that Mike Ng, Judy Chu, Mike Honda, John Chung, we're all youth activists. And it's now our time to go search for these new generation youth activists. So then we can ensure that the Asian American community will go toward a direction that we wanted to go. And I think I'll be here if anyone has any questions. So thank you for listening.
I want to thank all the panelists for presenting their experiences, their ideas, and some of their vision for the future as well. I'm just going to very quickly highlight some of the main points that I heard, and then we'll open it up for a dialogue and discussion, comments and questions from all of you. Safa was talking about the issue of collaboration or connections or networks, and that there's a weak system of networks between community colleges, the Cal States, the UCs and private colleges, that we could do a much better job of connecting ourselves, not just in this area, but in other parts of the country as well. And using the resources we have so that we can help one another on our various areas. He also addressed the issue of complacency, that there's complacency within our communities, within the youth. So what is the issue of urgency? How do we mobilize? And that's oftentimes when mobilization occurs, when there's a crisis. But how can we mobilize when there's not a crisis? And I think that is the challenge for us. And in some ways, we become too institutionalized. We have our nonprofit organizations, we have courses and departments or programs, and we have large bodies in some areas of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, and that can create a sense of complacency as well. Also, the issue of identity, it isn't enough just to say that you're Asian American or Pacific Islander, but it has to have a politicized identity connected to it. So how do we move the youth from that, just saying that they're Asian American, to thinking about it in a politicized way and creating spaces where they can have those political discussions? Sophia did a great job making the connection between the history of our parents and our grandparents and the impact it has and the legacy it has for the younger generation today, particularly if you live in a family or a household where they've experienced incredible trauma. That is not something that dissipates with an Obama election. That is something that is a lived reality for these communities. And what impact does it have? So how do we move from the very personal experience to the political? And what Khmer Girls in Action has done incredibly well is to meet the youth where they're at and to create programs that are innovative, that use new technologies, that use the resources that they have, and they're limited oftentimes. Use those resources to reach out to young women particularly, but also to the larger community. And they're really in the forefront of reshaping how we think about Cambodian community and issues of survival on there. And I think what's also important about what she said is youth, if they don't know their histories, they aren't going to be mobilized. So how do we teach Asian American Pacific Islander youth their histories? And it cannot be at the college level only. And if we're not teaching in the high schools, how do we do it through the youth programs, the community organizations, the forums, the hip-hop forums, where the spaces that the youth are occupying is where we need to think about teaching them about the histories of their own ethnic communities. Oftentimes, even the youth who live in the ethnic communities don't know their own ethnic histories as well. And also both Sefa, let's say all of them, all the panelists, but Arnold particularly highlighted the issue of thinking about who are the youth of the future. We need to identify them at an early age, nurture them, mentor them, give them opportunities so that they can grow, so that we will see future leaders like the ones he mentioned, whether they be political leaders, leaders who are leading nonprofit organizations, or who become future EDs as well. So we need to think about who we're going to identify now. And also, Arnold discussed how do we use new technologies? And I think that is where the youth are at. If we need to figure out how they use new technologies and how we can politicize this new technology, not just for social parties, right, but for political events and political education, and excite them on the issues that they are interested in. And I think that's what's most important. Our generation, we had particular interests that were important to us, but we need to think about this generation, which has vastly different resources. And I just think about the media outlets that were unavailable to me growing up. The media outlets that the youth have today is incredibly different, and how can we use those instrumentally and effectively and creatively to get the youth to be involved and to continue to be involved. Because what I see is a transition where I see many youth involved, perhaps not very often in high school. It's a rare case, but sometimes it does happen in high school, and Khmer Girls in Action is a testimony to that. But in college, they're very mobilized sometimes, really organized, but we don't see them after that. They kind of disappear after they are beyond that college years or the college age years. So what happens to these individuals who are very active on college campuses and active in nonprofits? So I think there's a gap there that we need to try to figure out how can we continue their involvement. as well. So at this point, these are just the highlights that I heard, and there are many other issues that I know that these panelists want to raise. And I want to open up to you who have a lot of experience. I see a lot of faces in here that are familiar to me who worked in nonprofit organizations, who worked with youth organizing in different capacities. So I'll open up the floor.
Hi, my name is Chua Vu, and I work with the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families, and I'm the Education Policy Coordinator in New York City. And we do work with youth and parents in some of our leadership development programs. And so New York City is obviously very diverse, and we bring together youth from all over the 5 different boroughs. And my question is, what are some of the strategies that you guys can offer in terms of organizing youth who come to our organization under the umbrella of Asian, AAPI identity, but also have multiple identities, on whether it's gender, sexual orientation, class, different immigrant experiences? What are the strategies in which you can bring together youth to have a substantive organizing advocacy campaign that embraces all of their experiences, all of their identities, where difference is not just viewed as divisive, but can be empowering for them as well?
I oftentimes, this is always a process, and for folks who work in higher ed, there's just models of identity development and how people learn to start to learn who they are. Knowledge of self is really, really important. And so, I oftentimes think that there's almost a rush to feel pan-ethnic right away without acknowledging that and without giving people the space to explore their own personal identity, because that's really important. I've been talking a lot recently with a lot of the young folks I work with at Pomona College that working in collectives is both selfish and selfless. It's selfish in the sense that you have to be part of this. You feel this thing that you can't name, this energy that you need to be involved, this sort of void inside of you that makes you want to be there. But it's got to be selfless, because you don't get everything you want. This is about the collective. This is about the group. But I think it happens in steps. I think there has to be a process for people to explore who they are and share and really just dive into that and talk about the differences, and be able to be comfortable with the differences, and then to get people to appreciate that across the board. But understand the larger goal is to build a collective community. Right. I just think we need to be. That's the dilemma of working in Asian American Pacific Islander collaborative groups. Oftentimes, the larger pan-ethnic group is privileged over understanding the differences and the nuances. And although there are attempts. I went to a public school. It was UCLA, but it was public school. Attempts to bridge that, we still have to provide that space. Some of the things that I've found useful is just the one-on-one time, giving individuals your time, and being, as a mentor, being there with them about what they want to talk about and helping them in that process, but also pushing them towards the overall good of why y'all are even here today. Okay, so when we're in my office, we're going to talk about you. What do you need? How can I help you? But when we're out there working in a community and a collective, we're all going to sacrifice. Being a Pacific Islander working in Asian American Studies, working at the Asian American Resource Center, you can't tell me, I know at Pomona College, a Samoan person is not going to walk through that door. A Samoan student's not going to walk through that door. Not within the next four or five, not unless they get a Division I football team, but that's a bad joke. But I'm saying, though, but I still see the value in working in the pan-ethnic community. But that only comes from the fact that I know who I am. I know who I am. And so my positionality within this group is understood by me. And I feel like it's got to be the same for other people. You got to give them that space to explore who they are, and then have them also understand the larger goal is for us to be a community, a large community. And that doesn't just extend within the Asian American community, as people of color, as citizens of this country. as friggin' human beings. You know what I mean? Like you gotta build on that, and so that's been successful for me. But I understand that college is for the privileged few who have the tools to actually even begin to process. And what the work that you all do out in the community is with a whole other group of folks who may not have the tools to process and deconstruct and think through issues in the way that young college students are able to do.
This was actually a little hard question for me because I have a background in politics, so I can only sort of relate in that. But I very much agree with Sifa because it's difficult to bring people together until you know your similarities. Until you know your similarity, you don't know your similarities until you can identify who you are, what your interests are, and what you can relate to others. And until then, you need to have time to mature for yourself to grow. And after that, then I believe can you identify what you can relate with other people and then to come together based on that. And I think that goes across the board for working with Asian Pacific American in politics, because the Korean Americans, the Chinese Americans, Filipino Americans, and across the board, we all have different interests, needs, and concerns. And it's just it's difficult to say that, oh, we're Asian Americans, we can come together, because we're just way too diverse. I don't think any other ethnic group would face the difficulties that Asian Pacific Americans face. So I think the issue is to identify what they are interested in or what they need, and then to come together and see how we can bring them together. I think it's a two-step process. I think one is going to be necessary to go on to the second.
So with KJ, we really value like relationship building with each other as well as teamwork, because we know that doing organizing work requires more than just one body, and it takes up a lot of capacity and a lot of effort. So we definitely I think one of our challenges is also engaging parents, because we work directly with the youth in high school. So we do talk about like how do we really engage people at different levels and people coming from different places. And with different backgrounds. So definitely we do joint trainings with the girls. We know it's really crucial that they know who they're working with, who can support them, who they can support and mentor as well. So we definitely have joint trainings where they just learn about themselves, learn about each other, and then learn about their histories, their different histories. And definitely gatherings and events. We have like our upcoming Feast of Resistance, which is Thanksgiving. We call it the Feast of Resistance, as well as like holiday parties or our college tours, different services that we also provide for the girls, where we're able to bring them from different levels together, because we know that's very crucial that they know who they're working with and who they can get support from and also mentor.
Hi, good afternoon, almost. My name is Suman Pendekar. I'm the Director for Asian Pacific American Student Services at the University of Southern California. I want to make a very quick comment and then ask a question to the panelists, because I think your question is really interesting about how do you live intersectionality, essentially, especially with youth that are incredibly complex and students are coming out earlier and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just as a thought for that, one of the things that I do with students who I talk to one-on-one or in groups is model that intersectionality too. You know, I'm externally a brown female, since people think I'm Ethiopian, but I'm Indian American. That's cool. You know, so I'm an Asian American, Indian American, progressive, feminist, leftist, ally, fully abled. You know, all those kinds of things, right? But to actually to not limit the dialogue to one frame of my existence, and to actually be very, very open about, well, how am I actually engaging with other aspects of my identity, which relates to other aspects of the community. So I just thought I'd throw that out there, because I think you're dealing with something that many of us try to work through, absolutely. And the question I had for the panel, thanks for the snaps, was I'd love to hear from each of you, how do you live the civil rights legacy, or how do you manifest a human rights framework in your own day-to-day work? And I'd love to hear specific examples, because you each do different things, you know, community youth organizing, mainstream political organizing, working with college students. But I'd love to hear really specific examples. For example, maybe you could talk about your reflective justice program a little bit, or anything where you're really using specific concrete examples that have been brought down from, you know, the 60s or from wherever else, or from international human rights movements that you invest in your own work.
Okay, so to be a little bit more specific, like how we really do talk about the things that had happened and the struggles that had exist and how we've really resisted and fought back is through our different political education training that we provide our girls at different levels. So for example, our Young Women's Empowerment program, which is the first level, we kind of have them learn a little bit about their history, the Cambodian history, how their parents came here, and the struggles and the hardships they deal with, and then at a different level, they kind of connect that to what is currently going on here in the U.S. and how I guess connecting what had happened in the past to what is going on now, and also at the third level, we kind of do cross-comparative history, where we do talk about the different I guess the change in politics that had happened back in the country and how it shapes. And where people end up and how it shapes the way we live now. So we do talk about different histories that folks have, that folks do bring to the table, as well as how other people are organizing in different communities. So we definitely do it in our trainings, and we do it through political education and popular. We do it in a way where it's really fun, and they get to kind of like use visuals and map things out and work in teams and kind of do it in a game way where you learn about different folks and how people have struggled, and why we continue to do our work and continue to fight.
I'm actually a second-year law student now. I don't know if I can segue into talking about the law a little bit instead of politics, but just for like a brief surface on politics, sometimes translations of ballot and vote for information for voters are poorly translated, and then it's necessary to go back and to cure these mistakes, because when it's written incoherently, the voter's obviously not going to know what to vote for or what to be aware for, and some of these things may be even regarding voting places or voting places. And if they can't find it, they can't vote, and that's pretty much taking their vote away. But for law, recently ever since law school started, I've been pretty involved in the local Asian American bar associations, including the primary one, Asian Pacific American Bar Association, Japanese American Bar Association, Korean American, Filipino American, and across the board too. But they provide law clinics where even the Southern California Chinese Lawyers Association provide law clinics that helps people that have language barriers and those that cannot afford lawyers to. So then we, as law students, because we're not lawyers yet, we would be the intermediary between the lawyer and the litigant to translate the issues, to identify those issues, to identify those issues, and to help them in any way we can. So it's pretty much pro bono work, and I think the ones I do are Mandarin translation and basic Cantonese translation. So these Asian Americans pretty much don't have anyone else to turn to, and the way to access justice in this country, a primary way I think to access justice is through the law, and I think this is what I also advocate a lot of students to do. So it's not just for law students or lawyers, but if you're bilingual, you can totally help out these different bar associations. And I'm sure that, I'm pretty sure you can even volunteer in APOC too, since they have numerous volunteer opportunities. So I just encourage everybody to do that.
I very specifically, things that I've done in every course that I've taught, that I've had the good fortune of teaching, there's always been a service component to it. because what we're learning needs to actually have an impact in people's lives. And so I'm always making sure that there's a requirement, a big requirement of what we're doing in the classroom or your grade comes from you participating in the community. Now that's easier done in a place like UCLA because you do have wonderful partners out here in Los Angeles, but that was harder to do when I was at Fullerton. It's even harder to do when I'm out there at Pomona College, although they still do it. And to their credit, they still drive the couple of hours on the freeway to be active, and I think they just need to be commended for that. You know, at the risk of sounding corny, love, I think, is an essential core piece of the civil rights movement, and I'm all about love, baby. That's all me. But quite honestly, it's about combating the opposite of that, and not being reactionary. It's about love. It's not. We do these things because we love who we fight for and who we stand with, and not because I hate you. You know, although there's a lot of reasons to hate people. And then the final part of it, and is the reason why I stay in higher ed, is because of the constant learning that I get from young people. You know, they are the most optimistic, you know, out of the box. I mean, they dream of a world without racism, and I'm like, well, good luck. You know, let me know how that turns out. And I get energy from that. I mean, it's just so inspiring to hear that, to see light bulbs. It's like, wow. They get upset for the first time. You're like, I remember that. But I feed off of that energy, and I think that was it. That's what drove those movements, was the energy from young people, and having them kind of make a space. And I see sort of my work and things that I get out of it is being in that space and encouraging and trying to ensure that there is a voice for young people to continue to have an impact on the societies they live in, because they have great ideas. They haven't been jaded by property taxes and things like that. Property taxes suck really bad. But you know, hey, they feel like, you know, they're good people, and so I learn about intersectionality from them. I learn about environmental racism from young people, you know, because honestly, my stuff is old. It's like praxis, you know, it's like serve the people. That's some old school stuff. I mean, these young folks are really pushing the agenda, and I like being around that energy, and I like learning from that. And I think that was the point. That was the point of those movements, is that energy was good, and it did change a lot of things, and it transforms the world, for sure. So.
Right back there? Where? Which one? Right there.
Hi. I heard Linda say something about reaching out through maybe hip-hop forums as one source, and I'm from the Midwest, and even though a lot of Asian Americans are involved in the hip-hop community and part of the hip-hop generation, it's nothing like it is in California. And I think that the hip-hop forums in the Midwest would probably mostly reach out to young Black adults and the disparity, and in Chicago especially, like, you can clearly see the issues and disparity. And so I'm just curious, like, how you reach out to the Asian American community with young adults with hip-hop forums, because I think that we are part of the hip-hop generation, and it is very relative, but I think that I could see how it would be hard to incorporate it, because a lot of hip-hop wouldn't really touch on Asian American issues.
Does anybody else want to answer this question first before I go? Is anybody else really involved in it? Because I have, go ahead.
The question was, what was it like, particularly the main part of the question?
Basically how you reach out to Asian Americans through hip-hop forums, because I
Well,
feel like they often try to target young Black adults.
Music is, I would say it's universal, or the way, it may not be necessarily hip hop, but the way music is used to heal, or to, throughout, I guess, time. It's like, it's a healing through maybe whatever's oppressed or damaged, like hurt communities that are oppressed. So music is something that can be universal, something that heals, that people use to heal. So if you use it in a way where you can use music to heal through times of you know, wherever a community's been hurt or something, you can unite people. You can unite people and bring people together in a gathering of music, and something positive, something just like that.
In addition to that, I do think that music is very political. We know arts and culture is very, very political, and so that's what engages the younger generation. And so there are a lot of Asian American hip-hop artists and groups in the country who do tours all across the country, and they go to college campuses, they go to festivals, events. They have Asian American hip-hop forums, not just African American ones, and sometimes they're combined with other racial and ethnic communities, which are great too. But these hip-hop artists, many of them are very political, and so you can bring them to the college campuses, you can bring them to conferences or community events and festivals, and so they think they're coming just to a performance or an artistic performance. But these hip-hop artists also take that opportunity, that time that they have, to talk about their personal experiences, to talk about how they became politicized. And I've gone to these because the students, I sponsor some of these through my department, because I think those are the kinds of events that students want to go to. They don't want to come hear me talk and give a speech. I say, I don't want to go. You need to invite someone, you know, who will draw and attract people to these audience. And I've seen that the students are there and they'll listen. So because they have to listen to the talk before the performance. And many of these artists don't cost that much money, I would say. So if you're in a college campus, you have some budget, you can work with the student organizations to do that, or you can send your students. I actually have my students do research projects, and I send them out to hip-hop forums as a research project, as an ethnographic field work. And so I tell them these are the kinds of projects you can do. So there's many ways to get them to volunteer at these cultural community events as well. So I just might encourage that.
Using hip hop as an entry point, for example, so assuming that you have an uneducated or a group of Asian Americans, then I think representation is important, right? Because then they need to see the faces. I would suggest people like Jeff Chang, who wrote the book on hip hop, Can't Stop, Won't Stop. You know, there's a lot of local artists. You know, there's the Blue Scholars, the Native Guns. I mean, there are a lot of really good Asian American hip hop folks out there. If it's not about entry points, if it's not about you know, trying to get the new faces in, then it has to be about your own work. Like, people have to feel like it's not hip hop's job to tell you where you fit. It's not the African American community alienating you. You have to not alienate yourself. You know what I mean? And you got to understand that hip hop is a generational thing, and it builds across different racial groups. I mean, you have people in Palestine and Israel being unified over hip hop, but if it's not being used as a kind of, you know, everybody come to this, you know, the music is good or whatever, entry point level stuff, then, you know, then I would say that kind of hip hop needs to be coupled with an understanding that, again, this isn't always about you, or you're not always going to see your faces up there, but you have to see the relevance of their situation and your situation. But if we are talking about entry points, if we are talking about getting people to your events, then you do have to consider representation. You have to consider who's out there and how they can speak to the issues and to what's going on with your communities now.
So I just have a minute or so for a comment, and then I'm going to let Stuart Quo speak. And there's so Michael.
Yeah, real quickly, Stephanie, you mentioned about service learning. And as we enter this age of accountability, especially for higher ed, is that something, do you think, has a chance of being integrated as a learning outcome for students and for institutions to value? And I guess connected to that is, you know, Linda and Sefa are kind of exceptions, and folks in higher ed that are connected to the community. You know, is there a way that we can better support faculty recruitment, right, and that value, right, this as a job description, right, the ability to connect with communities that we serve?
Leave it to Michael to ask the hour-long question, right? On there. It's a complicated issue, and as you know, Asian American Studies, ethnic studies started out the power movements, the civil rights movement, and it started from the community, mobilizing on college campuses. to create the kinds of curriculum that we have and the faculty positions we have today. And oftentimes there has been a bridge that's been built, but that bridge is not always as strong as it could be. And oftentimes there's a division now between the community at large and the academic institutions as well. And I think that we need to educate a younger generation, right, of high school students, college students, graduate students, so that we can educate in the very beginning. Now that we have these institutionalized, how can we get them to educate them that civic engagement, community engagement is a crucial part of who they are and the work that they should do, because they have the position to do so, to be involved with the community. So that's a really short, there's a much longer, complicated answer to the politics we face and the dire need we have in the budget crisis as they eliminate our courses, do not rehire vacant positions in Asian American studies or Pacific Islander studies. So we are at a pass right now, and there is a crisis in higher ed today that will be detrimental to ethnic studies.
I think the hard thing is that we don't get to impact or encourage the process or the rules by which faculty have to exist on campuses. Like, they don't get credit for doing these kinds of courses. Like, that's often the hardest part about this. So if they do it, sometimes it's at their detriment, like it could be, right? Because when in the process of tenure, when they talk about community engagement, they're really talking about institutional building. What kind of things can you do? What committees can you serve on that's going to make our institution better, absent of what's going on outside of the institution? It's very altruistic. You're not always going to, you're not going to publish a paper out of this. You're not going to write books out of this. It's really about lending your intellectual labor to the development of our community. And unfortunately, we don't have the kind of, I guess that's where we need to do is we need to impact that process and impress upon the folks or the powers that be who decide these things and make them privilege community engagement as a key determinant for faculty to be retained. Otherwise, I would tell. We had a young Pacific Islander, our first Pacific Islander studies person at UCLA, and honestly, man, I don't know if this is a bad thing, but my private conversations with him is like, don't get involved. You need to get tenure. You know what I mean? And we got this. We can hang on for a few years and then you can get involved. But it's a very real thing for them. And for students, I think it's important for students to understand that you don't have faculty here who don't care. It's just they exist under different circumstances at the university than I do as a staff person. Although I don't have tenure, so I got to watch what I say too. You know, that everybody's there have different sets of pressure points, things like that. So.
Thank you to the panelists. And before you applaud, I'm going to introduce Stuart Kuo, who's Executive Director of the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, basically one of the major organizations that put together the Advancing Justice Conference.
Hi, everyone. Well, I do want to thank the panelists, so why don't we thank them? They were talking about hip-hop, and that's new school. Let me just mention something about old school, because that's where I am at. But seeing Ish here, I did have to make a plug for, and I didn't even bring it, but upstairs somewhere, you will see a book that I co-wrote entitled Untold Civil Rights Stories, Asian Americans Speak Out for Justice. And it normally sells for $20, but there'll be a discount of $15. And if you're under 24 or under, we'll do it for 10. But I do want to make a plug for it because we have stories on Fred Korematsu, and Karen, his daughter, is here at the conference. There's a picture with Fred with Rosa Parks. There's a picture of Philip Veracruz with Cesar Chavez, because Filipino-American union field workers really started the UFW in concert with the Latino workers. But I also, seeing Ish, we have a story about his family and his family fighting for justice, his family speaking out against hate crimes and for peace and tolerance. And as you know, his brother was killed by a white supremacist in a hate crime 10 years ago. And I just, and I spent a number of years working on this, especially for high school students. I hired a curriculum specialist who has the curriculum lesson plans at the back of the book. So it's all set up for high school students. So I really encourage you to check it out. We tried to get most Asian ethnic groups covered, but I was limited by the people I knew. But we encourage you to really not only see if you could use it, but to give us feedback. We've sold about a third of the books, and frankly, we wanted to add a few other ethnic group heroes, community heroes, so we would appreciate your helping us in the next version identify those heroes. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Ish and his family because they're part of one of the chapters, and it's really about these heroes. And I just personally feel that our youth, as well as our older folks, need to learn the history of the people who have fought for civil rights. And believe me, the older folks in our community don't know that history either. Most people came in after 1970. They're not going to learn about Philip Vera Cruz. They're not going to learn about Fred Korematsu. And that's really a detriment to all of us if we don't learn about these heroes and what they all mean to us today. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to all of you.